With the Firehouse 48 models completed, the next step is painting them to have realistic colors and details. First comes the process of UVs, which sort of overlaps with the modeling phase. The process of UV editing refers to the way that 3D objects are unwrapped to form flat surfaces, sort of like wrapping a gift box in wrapping paper. This way, you can paint the surface using a 2D image file and wrap the file around the geometry. This method of texturing is the oldest and is still used for some objects. The term UV refers to how points are placed on a 3D object based on the 2D axes of the unfolded version, where U and V are used to enumerate 2D axes because in the 3D workspace, X, Y, and Z are used to enumerate 3D axes. With that done for every object in the scene, it's time to create 2D images to put into these spaces. The classical method of creating textures in 2D is an older method and one I prefer for flatter surfaces like walls and floors. For this process, I use Adobe Photoshop to tile, layer, and cut images to size according to the UV shells as I arranged them. With the floor of the Firehouse, for example, I used a tiled concrete texture to form the basic floor, then painted parking spaces for the trucks, a rubber mat for the area where the seats are equipped, and I added drains in the center of most of the floors to add a realism to the garage design. This is the most basic form of texture. Most shaders require a diffuse texture, which refers to the color, a reflection map that indicates how reflective various parts of a model should be, and a bump or displacement map, which helps add more realistic fine-dimensional quality for features like small bumps, noise, and others. For the expedience, I like creating bump maps with grayscale versions of the textures, color-corrected in various spots to correspond to the depth in the object. For example, the black sections in the drains, since they're darker, will show up as deeper recesses in the bump map, which is exactly what I want. Lighter parts, like the paint for the parking spots, will show up higher. I use these basic 2D methods to create textures for the walls and floors. I made the front exterior wall of the garage brick, reminiscent of classic firehouses, to balance and offset the more contemporary feel of the rest of the garage. For the more complex shapes, I used Substance Painter, which allows you to paint directly onto 3D surfaces without having to create the textures entirely in 2D. I tend to design and model by separating colors and 3D features together, so Substance Painter's tool that allows you to fill face by face is perfect for me, since the colors share borders with the geometry itself. This allows me to fill large swaths of each area simply by clicking the faces section to section. Substance also includes a variety of stamps, which allowed me to create all kinds of intricate texture detail, like the stickers on the doors and sides of the fire truck, including a mirror-readable emergency decal on the front of the engine block to alert drivers in front of the truck. It also assisted me in creating fine detail like the carbon fiber texture you see on the outside of each firefighter's suit. For some of the other more simply textured objects in the scene, I used a technique called procedural texturing, where instead of creating fully customized 2D image files for each texture, you can use an algorithmic static color, and can create automatically generated bump maps. Procedural textures aren't as flexible as custom textures, but they're far easier to make and significantly less hardware intensive than other texture types. The final phase of texturing involves testing the bump and reflection maps with real lights, so now we'll start putting lights into the scene to see how the textures work.